The other day, I was hanging out with two of my friends when a political topic was brought up. I discussed it thoroughly with one of my friends, but I noticed that the other was remaining quite silent. So I asked him for his opinion on the matter, to which he replied, "I'm not really into that stuff. I think talking about things like this is kind of stupid." Upon having him elaborate a bit further, I understood that my friend, let's call him John, just doesn't engage in politics at all. Now, if you're hearing this scenario and thinking, what's the big deal? Then this video is for you, and I'm going to explain exactly what's wrong in great detail. Hello everyone, I'm Flashes. I make gaming tutorial content, but for today, I wanted to do something a little bit different. By the way, don't worry, the normal gaming content isn't going anywhere. I just wanted to switch it up a bit. We just hit 150 subscribers, so if you want to be a part of this channel and stay tuned for more videos like this and more, then make sure to subscribe. Anyways, let's get started. So for John to say that, it would be fair to say that he considers himself a non-participant, a person who doesn't participate in anything to do with politics. And to be honest, this is a pretty common will among many people. Many people think that by not participating in discussions or even at an extreme level, surveying involving the political concept, they are exempt, that their lives as they know them will remain the same. It's a common misconception that by not involving yourself, the world around you will remain static. And it makes sense why people would think this way. In most cases, for a change to occur, one must do something to make that happen. And if they don't do anything, most of the time, a noticeable change will not occur. So people apply this same misunderstanding onto a political scale. If I don't research, discuss, or even vote for things, then my life will be the same way as it is now, as I want it to be. But this is almost never truly the case. See, the world's natural state is not one of remaining the same, but rather one that is constantly changing. It's ridiculous to think that one person's actions, or lack of action in this case, would have any impact on the unstoppable changing of the world around them. Rather, it's the complete opposite. Let's say you have an exam coming up, but you hate studying, and you just wish that life would go back to how it was before the stress of the exam ever even reached you. So you decide to stand in a field for a few days and let the exam go by. Kind of a weird example, but forget that. After your lack of action, you'll realize that you've not only failed the exam, disrupting your normal life, but now you're also going to have to resit it, or you're going to have to take supplementary classes. So by refusing to take action and study, you've caused your life to change more than it would have if you had just studied and passed the exam and went back to your normal life. So if you don't learn about politics, discuss it with your peers, and at the extreme level, abdicate your right to have a say on the decisions of your government, then you are not rejecting change, you are only assisting the fruition of a potential unfavorable change. See, governments come in many shapes and sizes. There have been great governments in the past, but there have also been absolutely horrendous ones. There are governments which terrorize their citizens, forcing them into absolute obedience, and there are also governments which take advantage of an idea of equality to exploit their people. And perhaps one of the scariest ones, there are governments which pretend to give their citizens choice and freedom, only in reality they have already sold their country to a different power. But let's stop talking about extreme cases that totally aren't happening in the world as I speak right now. Let's move on to something a little more localized and talk about what a government is in the first place. A government is a group of people who are selected by certain means to make decisions on behalf of a greater group of people. So these means could be, an election for democratic governments, or it could be being born into that power for a monarchy, for example. See, governments are actually unavoidable once a population gets to a certain size. Almost every group of people that exceed the size of a family automatically instills a governmental system into their society, whether by choice or unknowingly. In your family, you probably don't have a government, or that's what you'd think. Your parents are essentially a subset of your family that makes decisions for the family as a whole, and on the smallest level, this would be considered a theoretical government. It's in human nature to seek control and order, and building governments is the natural conclusion for us. So governments are unavoidable and will remain in human society for as long as humanity exists. So there is no reason to reject it altogether. It's really an impossible task. Rather, you must learn to make use of it for your own will. Gen Z is a good example of a very large subset of people who have an alarmingly high percentage of members who, quote-unquote, reject government. What do I mean by that? Well, I mean reject the whole concept of government as a whole. And to do this, many of them become non-participants like my friend John. By the way, I myself am Gen Z, I'm 19 years old, but for some phenomena, my generation is just naturally very apprehensive towards the concept of government in general. But as I explained before, governments aren't going to disappear anytime soon, and by not participating in some confused act of defiance, they only cause issues for everyone else. By the way, I'm not saying Gen Z is bad, in fact they're really good. And yes, I am also of this generation, so it sounds strange to give myself praise, but it is true. Gen Z's attitude is also very powerful in rising up against bad governments in particular. We have so many tools through social media to stay connected and be informed about things that are happening around the world, such that we can make things happen which past generations and maybe future generations wouldn't be able to do in the same way. For example, take the recent protests in Nepal, which saw several government buildings burned down and many corrupt government officials being forced into resignation. The protest goal was to make a stand after the unjust treatment of previous protesters against a severely corrupt government. Now, can I say that this protest wasn't violent? Well, no, it wasn't exactly peaceful, and while I can't condone the fact that people actually died in this protest, rest in peace to them all, the fact of the matter is that this was a movement completely directed by Gen Z, and it was widely successful. A corrupt government was overthrown by a cohort who have just barely become adults. It goes to show just how powerful this generation is at this one specific thing. Well, we don't know how this conflict is going to conclude, so I won't say anything else. And Gen Z's ability to do things like this is consistent throughout the years. Take the great noticing of America's odd ties to Israel, or the penetration of Western media's negative propaganda towards China. This is all fantastic, but as you know from the title of this video, a big portion of Gen Z are also part of the non-participants. They don't involve themselves with the rest of Gen Z, who are incredibly powerful together, and only hinder the movement. Now, throughout this video, I've kind of been shitting on this mysterious group of people called the non-participants. So let's actually get into exactly why their existence is so dangerous to society. So a non-participant is someone who doesn't participate in politics, plain and simple. But in reality, non-participants don't really exist, except for a few rare cases. In most countries, voting is mandatory, and their respective governments are very involved in the lives of their people. So since I live in Australia, which is a country which has compulsory voting, my friend John wouldn't actually be considered a non-participant, but rather an unwilling participant. See, the term non-participant implies that this person not only doesn't participate in something, but also that they aren't affected by it. But as it's pretty obvious, nobody living in a modern country is unaffected by the decisions of their government. So the idea of a true non-participant is actually non-existent in the real world. You could argue that nomadic druids who live in the forest hidden away from society but still live on the land of a certain country could be considered true non-participants, but let's be real, how many of these people actually exist? So non-participants don't exist, but unwilling participants do. I much prefer this term as it kind of encompasses the idea of these people a lot better. They are unwilling to participate, but ultimately they still do participate. In the case of my friend, he participates in that he is forced to vote, and he is also affected by the outcome. There is the case of unwilling abstinent participants as well. These would be the people in a country like the USA where they don't have to vote, but still are affected by the results of such a vote. If everything I just said seems kind of convoluted, I've got an example for you. Imagine you're on your deathbed in a hospital surrounded by family. You cannot speak because of your condition and you are in a lot of pain. A doctor comes in and gives you and your family a tough decision. The illness you have has no cure, and he says that you have approximately 2 years left to live. He also gives you the option to unalive yourself. If you don't go with this option, you may live for another 2 years, but you'll be in immense pain the entire time. So you sit there, mute, and watch as your family discuss what to do. Some of them are saying to put you out of your misery. Some of them are saying that it would be a shame to end your life so early. All the while, you sit there and listen to the people you love the most logically discussing whether or not to kill you. How would you feel to not be able to have an input in such a discussion regarding your own death? While in this example you don't have a voice, And you can tie some parallels to authoritarian governments with this, but if you are an unwilling, abstinent participant, then you are putting that inability to speak onto yourself. So that was a dark example, but it really can be life or death in certain cases. Time and time again, the decisions of a government have killed thousands of people. It's so very real, and that's why your voice matters so much. If you do not participate in politics, then unfavorable outcomes could very well come your way, and you will know that you are a small part of the reason why that bad outcome occurred. Just look at the democratic countries that time and time again fail the people. I'm looking at you, USA. And on the other side of the spectrum, you can see dictatorships creating wars and using innocents as ammunition. I'm not going to get into exactly what I'm talking about, as I don't want this video to narrow down on current events, but seriously, as homework, I urge you to do a little research on the recent actions of Israel and Russia, like I'm talking just within the last 2 days. And while we're on the general topic of decisions, to make a good decision, you must educate yourself on what is happening around you. There is so much information just out in the world that you can consume and learn. With experience, you figure out how to tell the truth from lies. You become passionate in your opinions about anything and everything. You see people for what they really want. People forget that politicians are just people, and they experience the same sinful nature as you do. You want to be rich? What makes you think the president doesn't love money? You want power? Do I even need to say anything else? But you would only know these different perspectives, opinions, and motives if you research and discuss politics and actually try to understand what is happening. Unwilling, abstinent participants actually have a bigger impact than they realize, because by abstaining in, say, a vote, they can be the very reason why a non-favorable outcome, by their own standards, ends up being chosen. Picture this, and let's use a less heavy example this time. Let's say you're a kid in elementary school. You and 9 other kids are given a choice between playing basketball or five-a-side football. Now let's say you absolutely hate basketball. The teacher says, show a hand for everyone that wants to play basketball, and 4 hands go up. Then she says, show a hand for everyone that wants to play football, and only 3 hands go up. Well, it's decided then, right? It's unfortunate, but I guess you'll just have to play basketball even though you hate it. Hold on, wait. If 4 people voted for basketball and 3 people voted for football, but there were 10 of you in total, the maths isn't adding up. And then you realize that you didn't vote. By being an unwilling participant, you didn't cast your vote, and yet you are affected by the outcome. You look around for the other 2 people who also didn't vote, and you see that one of them just wasn't listening to the teacher at all, and so he didn't even realize that a vote was happening. And you see that the other person is sitting right next to you. It's your best friend who just wanted to vote for the exact same thing as you, but seeing that you didn't vote, decided not to vote either. If you had voted for football, and with that your best friend had followed that, football would have won 5-4, but because you didn't vote, you caused the unfavorable outcome to occur. So how is this dangerous to society though? Well, look at it this way. We were using sports in our example, but in the real nation scale, it would be far more serious. Let's say our basketball option is actually something that would benefit rich people, and our football option is something that would benefit the working class and the average person. Well, if you understand that the rich people subset make up a far smaller portion of the total population, then you can already see why the option benefiting the majority is more suitable. And remember, the rich are already rich. An unfavorable outcome for them probably wouldn't send them onto the streets, but for everyone else, it's a very real possibility. Politics isn't just about the masses of people, it's also about you, just you. It's your own responsibility to take advantage of your government to serve you how you wish for it to. And if you can't be bothered to make an effort to learn, discuss, and understand politics, then you are not only going to be a loser, but you will cause many people with similar opinions to you to lose as well. Alright guys, I'm going to leave the video right there. As you can probably tell, I'm very inexperienced with videos like this, but I just thought I'd give it a try because I think this is actually a pretty important thing that a lot of people just miss out on. Don't worry, if you're a subscriber, this channel probably isn't going to become a political one. I was just compelled to make a video after hearing the words of my friend John. If you can think back and realize that you have been an unwilling participant at some point in your life, but now understand what it actually means to be that kind of person, I hope that you will take your impact more seriously, and I urge you to engage in politics. It doesn't have to be like you have to be obsessed. I just want you to be aware of what's going on. I know it can be heavy sometimes. It seems like a new terrible thing happens every day, but even so, you must engage with it. There's a saying that ignorance is bliss, and I agree with that fully. But just remember that the ignorant may not know that they're suffering.